go. All right. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. So we got Marky with us. No Sam, though. He's under the weather, but aren't we kind of always under the weather? I've never understood that one.
I'm over the weather too. Does that count?
Yeah, I mean, it looks sunny where you're at.
It is sunny Chattanooga.
There you go. I was just about to say, where are you today? So what you kind of got going before we dig into all this fun stuff?
Yeah, just visiting some leads, some accounts, and then some prospects. So we shall see what happens. But this is my first week officially on the road. So I'm up in Chattanooga. I'll be in Knoxville later today, and then Nashville at the end of the week.
All right. Well, I was gonna say Chattanooga. You know, if you like barbecue, you got to stop in there at Sticky Fingers. But I guess you don't really have time.
Yeah, it's more of kind of over and around this week. So I just am trying to see how much I can get done and kind of set the tone for traveling. So
Well, hopefully, from what I see, it looks like weather should cooperate. I hope.
Yep.
Yesterday, not so much.
Nope.
I don't know what you encountered, but I was coming back from Tennessee and I got slammed. Thunderstorms, rain, high winds, not fun.
Yeah, no, we had a little bit of that in the city, but luckily I was at work during that time period, so I didn't have to be outside in the rain. I was in the warehouse prepping for my drive this week.
Yeah, my fun part was I was on 75, so it was literally right behind me following the whole way.
Like, I'll get you.
Pretty much. So I came down through Dalton to Daresville, right there on top of me. Then it subsided. Then I got to Cartersville, and there it was. Then I got to Ackworth, and there it was.
Oh,
so then I called Sam and said, "It's coming to you, so enjoy."
I got a little present for you on the way.
Right. Just so you know, because he's moving iron barricades at that point. And I was like, you might want to step away for a little while.
A little bit.
So we got a couple different things here. We're going to talk a little bit, of course, about the industry and then mental health. We got some interesting things there. Don't know some of this what you saw. I know I sent you the notes, but of course we've always talked about safe banking, and that's probably going to be talked about for what, years to come, unfortunately. Yep. But they got something a little different, the Claim Act. I don't know if you saw this some, whatnot, but banking isn't the only industry that's dealing with the cannabis that's going to need protection. Of course, I mean, a lot of things do. Small businesses, individuals, all that. But Senator Robert Menendez out of New Jersey is reintroducing the Claim Act again. This bill, which is interesting, would allow insurance companies to provide services to the cannabis industry in states where it's legal without the fear of adverse action or liability. Now, what do you think about that? How interesting is that? I think it's highly important.
So is this insurance for so that you can get insurance if you are a medical cannabis user?
I think what it's going to do actually is not so much on the medical cannabis for the user. This is going to be for the businesses to protect themselves in case of theft, loss, damage, things along those lines.
I mean, that's huge because right now those businesses can't even insure their packages and their shipments. So, you know, if I, as a distributor, send something to a retailer and it gets lost, damaged, or stolen, we can't do an insurance claim on it because the carriers right now, whether it's FedEx, UPS, whoever, they won't cover those types of products. So we can't even insure our packages. So that would be huge if they could insure not only the, you know, what the products that they were getting, but also everything else included in that business as if it were any other business. That'd be phenomenal.
All right. So a little something here. The federal, that's not really going to be what you're looking for here. But essentially, and I'm going to have to dig in more to it because it's very, very vague on this one site. But the bill generally provides a safe harbor from penalties or other adverse agency actions for insurance companies that provide services to cannabis-related legitimate businesses in jurisdiction where such activity is legal.
Legal jargon for you can now insure and you can have business insurance as any other business would.
Right. So if you had a liquor store, a clothes store, a jewelry store, it's that same line of, hey, this is going to help protect me in case of fire, theft, damage, act of God, whatever is classified underneath.
That's wonderful.
Legal verbiage for this, that, and those.
That's wonderful. And when will that go into effect? Or what's the deal with it?
It's currently on the statute to be voted upon in front of the House in New Jersey, but he wants to take it federally. So, of course, it's going to have to get the steam from all these other states and then move forward. So, well, it's something we'll keep an eye on, but more than likely, this is something that won't be fully introduced until second session, so late summer, early fall. But hey, maybe we can push through, because without going into it, you see that between what happened last night and what happened today, the Senate's going to be pretty tied up for a little while.
Yep.
So, like I said, without going into it, they've now come out and supposedly are putting a list together against Hunter Biden and Joe Biden this morning. So, looks like things are going to be a little tied up in the House and Senate for a little while.
Yeah, that's good news for us, but also potentially bad news for us, depending on what the heck they did this time. So, and what they get caught with and everything else.
Right, because which one, and let's be honest, which one is going to take precedence? Guess what? They are. So everything else on the table gets slid over to the left. But we'll see what happens. Maybe that will provide the chance to go, hey, we got to dig into this, so let's put this on the docket for now. Let's hope.
Yep.
Now,
that'd be phenomenal.
Little bit further down the road from New Jersey, Virginia. The chances of the VA medical research bill passing after the Senate defeated seem to be somewhere between slim and none. But Senator Jon Tester, the bill's sponsor, does not see.
Your audio is going out.
I'll have to see, because
now it's good.
Yeah, I lost you completely for a minute.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
Yeah, everything was gone. You're lagging from my end. I see your lips, and then I hear the voice. But hopefully we'll catch up here in a minute. But as I was saying, the bill sponsor, Jon Tester in Virginia, says he does not see a path forward for the bill for the Virginia medical research, which would allow the Veterans Administration to research medical use for cannabis for veterans. That's not a good move. You know, that means our veterans who need it, they now aren't going to be able to do the research to help these people out. And these are some people who desperately need it.
Yeah, that's insane.
So unfortunately, that's all back onto the drawing board, back to square one. And guess what? Minnesota's doing the same thing. The feds may not be making much progress, but the states are. So keep in mind, without going into huge details of that, we have the Constitution, but guess what? So do their own states. The states a lot of times can make decisions that don't have to be done federally. So it's important for these states, Colorado, Vegas, California, to get on board with the cannabis, and Minnesota's trying to do it now too, because the Minnesota legislation appointed a bipartisan committee to work out the difference between the House and the Senate version of their legalization bills. The next step in the process is the chambers will vote on a compromise for the bill language. And if the bill survives these votes, it's on to the governor's office. Now, the legislation ends on May 22nd, so we're coming up on it. So we'll know which way it's going to go very soon in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
But see, that's one thing that's so important is, for example, since we were in Georgia, that's why the Governor Kemp here was able to move forward to reopen some businesses, even though federally they were still calling for the shutdown due to COVID, because the federal cannot supersede the state constitution in certain things. So it's very important for these people and these states to get on the cannabis end, because they don't have to wait for federal legalization.
Very true.
So highly, highly important. Now we're going to stay up in the Northeast, Maryland, which does Maryland consider themselves the South or the not? I know Virginia does, and I haven't understood that either. But
no, Maryland is the Northeast. And if you've ever met anybody from Maryland, they're basically like Boston. So
pretty much.
Yeah.
But the crab cakes are great.
True.
And
but
the Inner Harbor in Baltimore
I
is
would
wonderful.
definitely consider them North.
I would too, but I consider Virginia North either, but they consider them the South. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, Virginia's more rootin' tootin' though.
True. But for some reason, North Carolina and below, I consider South and up. But I spent a year in Virginia. Not a fan, but hey, the people were great.
Love it.
But in Maryland, Governor Wes Moore signed a bill into law that sets up retail sales of cannabis ahead of the July 1st legalization date. How about that?
That's awesome.
So you might want to add Maryland soon to your places to visit.
Well, the only problem with Maryland is the taxes there. I think it's like a 200% tax on products. So I'll have to go back and look. Actually, I think I have it in my phone. I might be able to look that up now, but
see, and that's one of the things that we've talked about before that I thought was very important before moving forward with a federal legalization is that we set up a federal taxation act or law to keep it in a certain mandate because some of our big companies in this industry, Trulieve, for example, they going through multiple states, multiple businesses, companies, entities, they can survive these things. But these small mom and pops, if they're taxed through the roof, how are they going to hold on?
Yeah. Well, the good news is that everybody is taxed on these products the same, whether you're a
Correct.
mom and pop or not. So the percentage is all the same. So as long as small businesses can keep their profit margins in line, can make sure that they're buying from the correct people to keep their costs down, and they're able to keep their overhead at a manageable amount, then that's really, that's across the board in any business. But yeah, I just looked it up. So Maryland has a 53% wholesale price in tax on most chewing and smoking and snuff tobacco, and then 30% wholesale tax on rolling your own or pipe tobacco. And then cigars, cigar tax is huge. It's 70% of the wholesale price. And for any premiums, it's 15%. So when you look at that from like an e-cigarette, it's 60% of the retail price is the tax, and any other is going to be 12%. So 60% tax in Maryland on these products, minimum.
Wow. All right. So as you were talking about that tax being across the board, which is important, and you're right on what you were stating, you've brought this up before. So as a mom and pop, how important is the one particular item that is on that bag to make sure it's there for their safety?
I mean, you always have to have your warnings. You always have to have your dosage. You always have to have, the potency on there as well.
And your what? COC?
Well, yes, they are required by law to have a COA, which is their certificate to prove what is actually in the lab results of that product and of that batch specifically.
Right. And that's what I mean. How important has that got to be for a mom and pop business? Because
well, the mom and pops are not the ones that are doing that, though. That's going to be who they buy from.
Right. But I'm just saying, for those mom and pops, how important is for them to go into this and say, I've got to have product that has that to protect myself?
Yeah, if it is one of those products that requires that and has different psychoactive or different controlled substance ingredients, then yes, they need to be buying products that have those, and they need to be checking those to make sure that they do work for each batch, because they are batch specific.
Absolutely. So, hey, again, we'll make sure we get you guys in touch with somebody like Marky for your small businesses and your major businesses, any business in this, because she knows what is important, what to do to protect yourself, to buy from a reputable company, to grow your investments, to grow your product in your business, but to make sure you protect your business.
Absolutely.
Vital.
Yes. CYA, cover your assets.
You have to. You have to, because, when we were in Vegas for BizCon a couple of years ago, Sam and myself, we didn't realize how immersive this business is, but so many people go in not understanding everything they need to do, all these steps. Then they're backtracking, and guess what? Now you've lost time, you lost money, and depending on how much you have to backtrack, you may lose your possibility of the business altogether.
Yeah.
You're gone. So now we're going to start kind of getting into the mental health aspect. And something I saw yesterday kind of talks about a little bit of this, but they're actually talking about, and to me, big shocker, many are prescribed antidepressants that, guess what? They're not working.
Yeah. So what a lot of people don't know is for someone with bipolar, depression, antidepressant medications don't work, yet they're still being prescribed.
Right.
And people are still getting misdiagnosed as well with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and bipolar. And it's becoming incredibly rampant. And instead of a lot of people looking for therapy or help, a lot of people don't have access to it. And I'll go into some of the statistics in just a few minutes.
Yeah, actually, because I got a research on a published report actually from yesterday that has found most antidepressants used to relieve chronic pain are being prescribed without significant reliable evidence of their effectiveness. And yet we've been diagnosing these type of medicines for what, 20, 30, 40 something years now, and we still don't have
you have to
evidence of
think about this
effectiveness?
too. There's not only misdiagnoses with mental health, there's also misdiagnoses with physical health. And a large one of those is something that I've been diagnosed with, and it's a diagnosis of exclusion, which means that if you don't have Lyme disease, if you don't have lupus, if you don't have chronic fatigue or all of these other things, then what do they say you have? They say you have fibromyalgia. And what is the medication for that? Well, being that it's mostly psychosomatic and being that it's in your head, there's a lot of physical symptoms, but there's not a lot of physical pathology that you can test to see, oh, yes, you have these biological markers. So if you don't have a biological marker for something, then they believe, guess what? It's all in here because we can't prove it's anywhere else. So if you're trying to treat someone's brain to help their physical health, then you have to make sure that you're diagnosing them properly, and that with that diagnosis, you're giving them a medication that is scientifically proven and does have backing, and not just, well, I've done this before. That's not medically responsible at all.
Now, for example, this 2-year study by a nonprofit group found that, guess what? The only one antidepressant was effective for short-term pain relief based on the available evidence. Now, I don't know this study too well, but I think it's Cochrane. It's an international collaboration of researchers that produces for the Cochrane Library, which includes a database of Semitic summaries addressing key questions of healthcare. Now, this is a global public health concern, which I think, yes, absolutely, especially with COVID and whatnot. And the professor of chronic pain research at the University of Southampton in United Kingdom, chronic pain is a problem for millions who are prescribed antidepressants without significant scientific proof that they help, nor, as you stated, understand the long-term impact on the health. The review included 176 studies with a total of 28,000 participants, and they looked at 25 different antidepressants. The studies, as you said, mainly investigate 3 types of chronic pain: fibromyalgia, nerve pain, and muscular pain. The average length of the study was 10 weeks. Now, what is that really going to do, though? Because if you just started somebody on it...
10 weeks is really not a long study at all, but it is good to know that in the short term, within 3 months, will this do anything? And if the answers are leaning towards no, then after that 10 weeks, what is the path that you take, right? Well, obviously, if what you took didn't work for 10 weeks, then there's no point in continuing it. But a lot of the problems is that with all of these psychoactive drugs, you have to take them for a while in order for them to really take hold on your brain and make significant pathway changes, because you're specifically telling neurons not to fire, or you're trying to get neurons to fire. That's the only purpose of all of these drugs. Any psychoactive drug is to activate or deactivate a part of your brain. And if that doesn't work like it's supposed to, then there's no point in taking it, because you don't know what those long-term effects will be. You don't know if you're turning off a part of your brain that you may need for survival, that you may need for work, that you may need for raising your children or being empathetic towards someone else, or just being able to focus enough to drive and not get in an accident in traffic.
Right. Now, here's something that's interesting. We stated that 176 studies were done, correct? 72 of the studies were funded by pharmaceutical companies. So wouldn't there already be a bias right there? Because I'm selling this product to help you. So I'm funding the study. Wouldn't I
Well,
want to
the
report?
reason that they fund those studies is because they have to get a lot of money from the government. They have to continue research. So it's not like they're like, oh, I wonder if this is hurting anybody. No, that's not why they're doing it. They're doing it to do the scientific research that's needed to prove to the FDA that yes, these drugs do work. We did have positive results because they have to have results. This is a results oriented industry.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you've ever known anybody that's worked in pharma, but I used to work in medical device, and I was around a lot of the same, people that pharma is involved with. And when it comes to a lot of the drugs that are released, they are done through doctors that are getting kickbacks for prescribing
Right.
these.
Right.
Even to this day, it's a huge practice, and it's a huge malpractice, in my opinion. But if a drug company is paying a doctor to push a drug or giving them free drugs to give to their patients to get them hooked on something,
Right.
I view that as wrong. But it happens every day. And
Mhm.
until we can change our pharmaceutical system and until we can change our medical system in the US, which is completely flawed and skewed and awful, then it's not going to be fixed.
Right. And that's one of my concerns, as I was stating, that it's funded by the pharmaceutical company. Now, to
Well,
your
the good
point,
news
you're right.
is that if it's funded by them and they don't work, then they have to seek out alternatives and they have
Right.
to start testing those. So that means that more and more of our industry can, vie to be in those trials and in those experiments.
Mhm.
But then along with that comes that money, and our industry does not have pharma money.
No. And they even show here that even when the cause of the chronic pain is the same, the biological changes that occur in the nervous systems are varied. And so
Hmm.
it's no surprise that the pain presents differently from person to person, understandably. And not everyone will respond the same way to the same drug.
Yep. And we've known that forever,
Right.
right? If you like, even when it comes to illicit drugs, they affect everyone differently. Anything you put in your body, everyone's body chemistry is different. Even if you are a twin and you have the same biology as someone else,
Mhm.
your body will react different because of how your body reacts in its environment and its intake and its output.
Well, and that's the thing too. Let's say that you and I were biological twins, DNA structure, all that stuff. Okay, so if you're eating something different than I do, drink different things than I do, our balance of the medicals are going to be different on what we take for the same thing because of, like you're saying, the ingestion of other things that are going to subsidize them.
And if we have a huge food problem as well.
Mhm.
So if I am eating junk food
Right.
24/7, and if you're eating, organic, clean, raw foods every day that have zero pesticides, zero
Mhm.
additives, zero dyes, everything else, then we are going to have completely different reactions to
Right.
anything that we put in our body.
Yep.
Whether
Exactly.
it's, I mean, I could get indigestion from something and you could completely avoid it because you have a clean gut.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So there, right there, shows that shocker, person to person, not everyone's going to respond the same to the same drug. Of course, they're not.
Hmm.
We're all made differently.
Yep.
Now, what this comprehensive analysis demonstrates is that when clinical trials are designed poorly under the assumption that everyone's experience of pain is uniform, most depressants appear to have limited use for treating the chronic pain.
Yep.
And research shows that people want most is strong, empathetic relationship with their care provider. And I know you're going to get into that a little bit more, but they want to discuss what matters to them, and that they want easy access to support and have partners in their care.
Exactly. And that's a huge problem if you can't find care.
Yes.
And I mean, if you look at Alabama, for example, it's over 800 to 1 people to mental health specialists
Hmm.
in the state of Alabama. It's insane.
Yeah.
Kansas is awful. Oregon is awful as well because they have too many people there and not enough health professionals. So even if I were to go into Alabama and try to get in, because there are so many people, it would take months for you to be seen. And if you're suicidal, you don't have that time.
No, absolutely not. And, this is one of those things. I'm going to get to some of the stuff you said here in just a moment. And I'm just going to be completely honest here. My views on mental health, mental help has changed in the last several years. I was always brought up in the family that one didn't show emotion.
Yep.
Grow up, get over it, deal with it. Don't explain what you feel, why you feel, how you
Rub
feel.
some dirt on it. You'll be fine. It was inside, outside. It didn't matter what was wrong with you. I was raised the same way. And a lot of people were.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, that's not going to say the sole reason, but that had a lot to do with why my first marriage was not, well, my only marriage. I haven't done it again. But that's one of the big reasons why it did not survive, because I wasn't able to say, hey, let's talk about what's going on. Hey, how do you feel? What do you feel? No, you don't do that. You deal with it. So my son, for example, has started seeing a therapist. And guess what? Yesterday we went. Therapist even said he has made great strides. And I see it as well. And I'm supporting him 100% in it.
Yep.
I told him, yeah, I'm proud of you for wanting to do this. I'm happy that you want to see this person. I'll drive you there. You want me in the room? I'll be in the room. You don't want me in the room? That's fine. Talk about me if you have a problem. Talk to him about it. Do it. Maybe I don't realize that I'm saying or doing something. So yesterday he goes, I said, do you want me to come back there? He goes, no. I said, wonderful. That's fine.
Yep.
Because he needs that outlet. He needs that place. But I didn't have that.
Well, and we all do. Yes. And, I think this is a good segue into what we were going to talk to about today. Absolutely. As far as mental health goes. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I thank you for having me on to talk about this, because it's something that is near and dear to me. I myself, on August 1st, 2020, I tried to kill myself. I was not in a good place. I was not stable. It was in, the middle of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. I had a great job at the time, but that didn't matter. I was making great money at the time. In fact, that day I even got a $20,000 bonus check as a signing bonus for the job that I had. Didn't matter. Right. It didn't matter that I got that day. It didn't matter that I was, stay in a stable place. None of that mattered, because my mental health was not good. So, and a lot of people don't know what happens in those situations. So I'd like to take a few minutes and kind of break down what happens.
Absolutely, so please.
When people reach a breaking point, they spiral. Mm-hmm. And a spiral can look like a lot of different things. To some people, it can look like getting quiet. To some people, it can look like acting erratic. And to others, it can be just going through your normal routine. And maybe you are there's a 2% difference in your activity level. So it doesn't have to be anything dramatic. Mine, I was doing all of my work calls. I was doing everything I needed. Mine basically happened at night. I had gotten into an argument with someone I was close with, and that was my breaking point. And I decided that I was going to start looking up how I could kill myself. I was prescribed antidepressants. They clearly drove me over the edge, did not work, because as soon as I got on those, which was January of that year, by August, I was tanking. And so, I was researching how to, kill myself. I read that arsenic was located in cherry pits. So I went upstairs and I was eating cherry pits. Like, it was insane. I took a whole bottle of pills. I should not be alive. I coded twice in the hospital, should not be alive. And so what happens is whenever someone attempts to kill themselves and they're brought to the hospital, they are then transferred to psychiatric care. Now, in Georgia, there's a minimum of a 72-hour hold. Most places have a minimum of a 72-hour hold. But what you don't know is the government funds that 72 hours. So the 1-star Yelp review place that I got stuck in was kept me for almost 7 days.
All right, now I was gonna say, I got a quick question, and may not know the answer because I don't. I know that doing some stuff that I have in the medical field, for example, they've changed their time frame of the hospital, and this is why I'm asking this. So if you have an operation that starts at 9 in the morning, your visit doesn't start at 9 a.m. It starts at midnight the night before. So
yeah, because you're not supposed to eat or drink, and then you have to, sometimes depending on what that is, you may have to ingest something depending on what your surgery is, so that they can see things during surgery. But yeah, it really starts the night before.
right.
And
So the
then you
reason
have
I'm
to get
asking
there
that,
several hours early so that they can administer all of your different all the different drugs, so that they can make sure your anesthesiologist has you out beforehand and everything else.
right? But the reason I'm asking that is, in this particular case, and I don't have that answer, is it a true 72 hours? Is it really 72, or does it start the midnight before the time that you would have come in?
No, no, they try to hold you as long as they possibly
Okay.
can, and they don't want to let you go after 72 hours if you're not okay. You have to prove that you're able to go. So they put you through counseling, they put you through therapy, and you have to go to those different sessions. Sometimes it's in a group, sometimes it's individual, depending on the facility and your level of care needed. Sometimes you're in a room by yourself, sometimes you have a roommate, depending on the hospital or setup. So it is, sometimes it could be, almost like a dorm. It really just depends. The facility that I was in, there was a second bed in there. There was another girl in there. She as well had tried to, harm herself, and self-harm is a mandatory 72-hour hold. But like I said, they put in for my release, but then it has to go through channels of approval. And if you don't have anything that you have to get out for, if there's no legitimate reason for work or anything else, and you don't have an outside doctor to call in on your behalf, then they really can't hold you. And which, is imprisonment. It's not right, but they have to do it because this is extremely important to know. So last week there was an active shooter in Midtown, and it was national news. It was a huge deal. And the reason that this individual pulled a gun, he was at the hospital seeking mental health help. And he was given a medication that did not work for him. He had told them that. His mother was there with him. And he ended up getting so frustrated with these people because they were not helping him and refused to help him, that he shot and killed one woman, and he injured severely 3 others. And I was actually in Midtown when that happened. And it's not only a reminder to myself of where I was, but it's a reminder to myself of the world that we live in, and still how in 3 years' time, not much has changed. If anything, it's gotten worse. So some of the statistics that I have for you today, outside of my, internal dealings with this, is 21% of adults are experiencing at least one mental health issue. And all of this comes from a 2023 study that was done and just released in the last month. And out of those, that's 50 million people that have just one. 55% of adults with mental illness have never received treatment. And 5.4% of those have a huge or severe mental illness problem. So I feel like the guy in Midtown definitely fell in that 5.44%. He was trying to get help, so he was doing better than 55% of Americans. And unfortunately, he wasn't given the help he needs. So 40% of Americans reported symptoms of anxiety and depression. 40%, which is insane. I mean, we're looking at almost half of the country has some kind of anxiety or depression.
Now, I got a quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
One, we're talking Americans, okay? So this is not even global information. That number would be even bigger. Second of all, we're talking adults. What about all those under 18?
And you have to remember too that people, your frontal cortex, which is your frontal lobe right here, does not finish development until in your 20s. And if you're a guy, 28 years old. Mm-hmm. So if you think about people who are being given all of these different depression and anxiety and all of these different SSRIs and SNRI medications that are affecting their serotonin, that are affecting their brains. And their brains aren't even fully developed yet, some of these people, because as an adult, you're 18. That does not mean your brain is fully developed yet.
Yeah.
So we could be prescribing medications that have long-term harmful effects and not know it, because a lot of these medications, if they're doing a 10-week study, what happens in 10 years?
Right.
What happens in 20 years? We don't know. We really don't. These medications haven't been around long enough, and neither have the humans that are using them.
And the last thing I was going to mention too is, in that key word, it says right there, reported. What about all the ones that don't report it?
Correct. And what happens is, you know, this leads, if people can't get the right medications that they need, if they don't have access, then what happens is they try to treat themselves. And they try to treat that by, you know, going to Facebook, asking their peers. This is not reliable information, because your peers do not know you, especially if they are your social media friends. They know about 1% of your life, and that is only the 1% that you have cherry picked out to tell them.
Right.
And then they are going to formulate their own opinions based off of that. So it's incredibly biased. So please do not go to your friends and, you know, try to figure out if what you need for your mental health. They don't know, and you don't know either. And self-medication, if you can't access treatment, 11% of adults report using alcohol, 6.82% report using illicit drugs, and less than 7% seek treatment for abuse of these substances. So what happens is, if they are taking alcohol or other drugs to try to self-medicate, they're not seeking help. So what happens is, if you, like myself, were in mental decline, and then you drink on top of that, which is also a depressant, then you're sending yourself into a further depression. And if depression is your problem, then it's a hole. It's a big, big, big black hole. And once you're in there, unfortunately, you can't see light. And so I really recommend that, you know, people really try to get the help that they need. And I have some resources if people are interested, and they're not that expensive.
Right.
So,
and I want to keep in mind, there are some places where you can get 100% free help as well.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I just want to give access to people that are looking for it, who may have gainfully, you know, maybe gainfully employed and have jobs, but that their healthcare provider doesn't have mental health care.
But
or they don't have health care, so they think that they can't go to a doctor if they don't have health care.
And that's the key. Don't use "I can't" because I can't afford it as an excuse. Yes, let's be honest. If you can pay for it, it is going to be better care, probably. But at the same point, find a way to get a form of the help, because there is some free help out there.
There is. And so if you go to any Department of Public Health.
You just froze on me, just in case you don't notice. I've got you frozen here. All right. Well, while I'm waiting for you to come back, while I got you frozen there. But yeah, I was just going to say, because, for example, I found that out because when I was going through after my divorce, I wanted somebody to talk to. And I found a way to go to free help. So I did that. All right, there we go.
Yeah, you can cut out the other one. That was my other phone. It got too hot, apparently.
Cool. That's why you froze.
Temperature. It got too hot.
So keep that in mind. Your phones can overheat.
Yes. But yeah, so with that being said, right, a lot of the reasons that people don't seek treatment or seek help is because they don't know how to, and they don't know what resources are available.
Right.
And if you've ever been overwhelmed, or if you've ever been depressed, one of the symptoms is feeling not worthy and not good enough. So you feel like you're not worthy of help. You feel like you don't deserve help. You don't deserve happiness. You don't deserve to feel good, or to wake up without the anxiety and the depression. So the first resource that I really want to talk about is called, it's a website, and it's called Talk to Mira. So if you go to www.talk2 TalkTomira. So TalkTomira.com, talktomira.com. That is a resource where it's $300 for the year.
Wow.
The year. And that gives you access to vision. It gives you access to mental health. It gives you access to labs, to STD reports. And in the mental health section, there's two different kinds. You can get talk therapy for only $25 an hour, which is incredible. And you can go to an office visit and get a diagnosis. If you need a diagnosis, if you don't know what's wrong, but you know that you don't feel right, it's less than $200. So it's an incredible resource and if you need medication, you do have to do the office visit because the counselors, which do the talk therapy, do not prescribe medication. So you would need to get a diagnosis for that medication through an office visit with a licensed physician. So that is a great resource. I use it. I've used it. I've used the talk therapy. It's great. They're good counselors. And it's definitely helped me. The other resource.
I was gonna say real quick, I was trying to type that in while you're saying it, but I just found one even that says betterhelp.com. No waiting room or driving. Yep. Online counseling. So there are, and I'll put these up later on some of these sites, but just saying, I don't want to say there's no reason not to, but take that reasoning that you're giving yourself out of your head because there are ways to get help.
Well, there's ways and there's reasons, and you are worth it, right? And BetterHelp is another one. So BetterHelp came out, I want to say right before COVID or during COVID. And it is an online and video and phone call way to get mental help, to figure out, what's going on, to talk to people. And it is a great resource. And then, for those people out there who don't necessarily want talk therapy, who don't necessarily feel like they, want the pharmaceuticals, that's when, we do have resources that we do have in the market. So if you suffer from opioid addiction, or if you suffer from, depression and getting out of that funk, Kratom is a great thing for you. It is illegal in some states. I know it's illegal in Alabama, and I think in Missouri or Kentucky as well. Kratom is, yeah. But Kratom is in the coffee and tea family. There's different strains of it. We've talked about it before. One of its main uses is to help people with opioid and those severe drug addictions to get over that, because it does provide relief. So it's been used in Chinese medicine for thousands of years. So it's incredibly utilized in ancient drugs. And I definitely recommend that. There are strains for like the red strain, which is more of a down. There are the green strain, which is more of like a hybrid. So indica-like, hybrid-like. And then the white vein is more sativa or energy-like. So I definitely recommend that for people. Delta products are great. Microdosing is wonderful. We have 7 different mushroom brands that we now carry, and 6 of those are microdose. Only one's a macrodose. And I recommend those as well. It really can help people with anxiety, depression, brain blocks of any kind, whether it's emotional, and even getting into the mental. And then you also have the one recommendation that I have that is so obvious, but people just never think of, is water and sleep. If you're water or sleep deprived, those are the 2 main things that will completely destroy your mental health. Mm-hmm. And people don't think about water as affecting mental health, but it does. Yeah. I mean, if you get dehydrated, your brain gets dehydrated, you get a migraine. Your brain doesn't work anymore. That's just a fact. Your brain runs on water and carbs, unless you're in ketosis and it runs on ketones. That's all that it needs is sugar and water. It's a complicated little beat. That's it.
Well, about a year ago, I stopped drinking sodas. And I'll just tell you that, think about it. You drink a soda, yeah, it tastes good, but you can get dehydrated quicker. That sugar crashes down. So yeah, absolutely. The water's going to help you.
Well, because you're overloading your brain with sugar, and then it crashes. So it'll happen with, moderation in all things, right? But sugar is the most addictive substance on the planet. It is put into every single one of our foods in the US. There's not a food that it's not in. And if it doesn't have sugar, then it has an alternative like
Right.
aspartame or another additive. So I would definitely recommend, that people just drink as much water as you can.
Mhm.
Everyone's different, but you need to be drinking at least a minimum of a half a gallon if you're an adult to a gallon. Have a cup like this, one of those metal inside cups. It keeps everything cool for longer.
Yes.
And you can carry them around with you, and it carries a big amount. I even have a backup here because my ice is in the other one, so I can still refill the water.
There you go.
So, definitely do that. And then sleep. And the number one recommendation I have for sleep is do not look at your phone an hour before you have to go to bed.
Right.
Don't do it. I don't care what job you have. I don't care what responsibilities you have. Include that hour in your sleep pattern and make it a habit. So if you know you need 7 hours, make it 8. Go to bed an hour early, put your phone down, and then just take that hour and that'll give you time to fall asleep. Nobody's going to take an hour to go to sleep unless you've got insomnia. And then that's when you need, and that's when you need to talk to your healthcare professional about getting something to help with sleep. But if people are just scrolling on their phones constantly,
right,
what they don't know is that light keeps your brain awake. It won't shut off. It's a trigger for your brain to say, hey, I'm in an environment that I need to focus.
Right.
And as long as your brain is focused, you can't sleep. So I definitely recommend people keeping that in mind as far as the water and sleep. And then, if you have any questions about anything, there are so many hotlines for everything. There's suicide hotlines. There's mental health hotlines. There's hotlines that, you can use with disabilities. There's everything. So I would definitely recommend that people, before they, get to that hopeless point, while they're still in that, trying to push through, because that's the thing that people do with mental health. They try to have this mental fortitude and act like there's a fortress around their head and nothing can get in and nothing can get out. And that's just not the case. So if they're in that mode of still trying to hold it together, that's when you need to seek help. That's the best time to seek help, is before you get to that hopeless stage, before you get to that point of, no return, before that despair.
So what do you think some of the possible factors as to why people aren't getting treated are?
The possible factors include access, being able to get access, right? So I mentioned in Alabama, it's 850 people to one mental health specialist. So that's why. The others cost. It's incredibly expensive. Any doctor nowadays that is considered a specialist, which a psychiatrist is considered a specialist, it's more expensive to go to a specialist than it is to go to a general practitioner or a regular doctor. And then the other is it really just falls down to stigma. And I think the stigma of not being able to be okay when none of us are okay.
No.
I don't think I've been okay one day in my life. And, and I was just told to suck it up and deal with it. And those things got programmed into my brain. And so I had to deprogram my brain when I went into therapy of, I am good enough. I do deserve enough, and I can be happy. And there are things that you can do. And one of the things you'll learn in therapy, and that your son's probably learning as well, is triggers and coping mechanisms. So what triggers your brain to go into those depressive, anxious, or unclear, unclean thoughts, intrusive thoughts? And then how can you reprogram or wire your brain differently, or give yourself something to do or say that will help you to cope with that? So once you figure out what triggers you, a great way, if you don't know, to figure that out is journaling. Every counselor and every therapist will recommend that you start journaling your moods, your mood swings. If something makes you anxious or upset, if something makes you withdraw, all of those things you want to record. And then once you start recording them, what you're going to find is you're going to find patterns. Right. And once you identify those patterns, then your therapist will help you determine what coping mechanisms can get you out of those patterns or create new patterns for yourself. And, we're very routine oriented people. That's just how humans operate. We get up, we do stuff, we go to bed. Everyone does every single day. It's what we all do. No one is different. So we all have patterns. And once we can identify those patterns and figure out which ones serve us and which ones don't, then we can learn to identify and remove patterns or change them or alter them in a way to where they work and serve us better, because that's all you're trying to do your entire life is serve yourself. Everything else is ancillary, because without you, you can't do anything. So it's vitally important that people know that there's help, know that they're not alone. Literally 50 million people in America are going through something similar every single day. Right. And this is not something where, a lot of people get fooled by terms like seasonal depression. It's not just a season. It happens every day. You'll have depressive thoughts all the time. And sometimes you won't even know that you're having them. It could come in the form of judgment of others. It could come in the form of judgment of yourself. It can come in the form of jealousy. It can come in the form of rage. It can come in the form of sadness, of confusion. There's so many different ways that it can present itself, and everyone, like we have been talking about this whole time, is different. So don't necessarily pigeonhole yourself because you see someone else who has talked about, oh, well, Sally has seasonal depression and mine's not like that, so I know I don't have that. Or, oh, well, Sally G, she's got bipolar and she acts crazy. I can't have bipolar. I don't act like that. That's not how mental health works. It's not like a broken leg where you can see it, you can identify it, and you can fix it. I wish it were.
Well, and that's what's kind of crazy about it is, one, what works for me may not work for you. And that's what people have to understand. Not everybody's treatment's going to be the same. Medicine's going to be the same. Reactions are going to be the same. But what really got me is a couple of weeks ago, Sam and I went over some numbers on the show. And actually, the suicide attempt rates are higher in the spring than they are in the fall and winter. And we associate it higher with the winter because of the darker hours. And that's not the truth.
No, a lot of people are happier during the winter months because they're surrounded by family. You have to think about the holiday season is during the winter time. And then when people are separated again from their families, in January, they have added pressure of resolutions. They have added pressure of new you, new me, new year, new you, all that bullshit. They have added pressure of now, oh shit, what did I do last year? I have to pay my taxes. Right. And I didn't save up for that. I didn't prepare for that. People with small businesses, they have business taxes. And if they didn't pay them quarterly, then January through April is just an anxiety-ridden, right, shitstorm for them. So you have to think about all the pressures that spring brings. New Year's means new pressures, new stresses. So that typically, and people are also by themselves. They've separated out of that family environment. You have February, but that's just a pressure-filled, Valentine's Day kind of thing. What is there other than stress on that day? They didn't do something. They did do something. It's the expectations. One of the things that I learned that has been incredibly helpful for me is to remove my expectations from things that I don't need to have expectations on. And I'll give you a few examples. So when I get home every day after work, I used to have an expectation that my house would look the same way that it did when I left. I have a dog. That's a dumb expectation.
Right.
So what would happen is I would get home and I would get frustrated that she would move the curtains, or she would poop on the floor, or that she would, eat my chair, or whatever it was, right? And so I removed that expectation now. And as trivial as that sounds, I walk in my house, no expectation of what it's going to look like, no expectation of what, my dog is going to have done. The only real anticipation that I have is seeing her and getting that, where she right. stands on her hind legs and she gets all excited and she's happy to see me.
Right.
So I've tried to set anticipations instead of expectations. So I anticipate that she will be happy when I arrive, but I do not expect it. So if she comes out of the room and maybe she's like cowering her head because she got sick and she, feels bad or whatever, which has happened, I don't get mad at her for not being happy to greet me. The same thing comes with relationships, right? I do not set expectations that are not verbalized on any relationship. So if I have an expectation of my boyfriend, I'm going to tell him what that expectation is so that he then has the choice to live up to it or not. And if he doesn't, then I have the ability and the right to be disappointed. But when people walk in, so this is another great example of when you get done with work. If you walk into your house and you have an expectation that your spouse, partner, or, romantic interest is to have done something and they don't do it, then that sets a bad tone for the minute you walk in the door. So instead, what I recommend is if you have the ability to call or communicate with your partner, your spouse, your romantic interest on your ride home and say, hey, did you have an opportunity to do that thing that I asked you? I was going to walk in the house and I just don't want to walk in and then have immediate disappointment if it's not done. And if they say, oh yeah, I didn't get that done. Okay, great. Now I can walk into the house without that anticipation or expectation. And I can know that I need to do that first thing, and then I'll have that mental relief.
Right.
And so it's little things like this that we can learn about ourselves and learn to do for ourselves to make our life work better for us, because everyone is going to have different things that they want in life. And there's so many different services now. So if you are a person who gets frustrated because your, fiance forgets to buy your precious milk, your almond milk from the store, use Instacart. Don't put that pressure on them. Don't put that expectation that they need to be your everything. And one of the last points that I'll give for today, because I know we're almost done, is whenever you put an expectation on someone, it doesn't just affect you, it affects them.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is, in turn, that can start to affect their day. It can start to affect their tasks. It can start to affect their job, their income, their mental state as well. So we really need to be aware of how we say things to others. We need to be aware of our responsibility to others. And this doesn't mean that you're responsible for triggering every person just by breathing. It means that if you truly do something that does have an effect on someone else, then you are aware of that effect and that you're cognizant of that whenever you're doing something. I think a lot of people get into this, well, I don't care about them because they don't pay my bills. Well, in turn, karma does. And all of it is responsible for creating energy. And if you create positive energy in your life, you're going to get positive results. If you create negative energy in your life, you're going to get negative results. And that's in conjunction with everything you do.
Absolutely. Because one of the stats I was going to throw out that you gave me was Nevada and Arizona reported that between 36 and 39% of their population cannot access care. Now, with that being said, Nevada had 3.2 million people in the state in 2023 so far. Arizona, 7.4. So think about that. That means Nevada, roughly 2 million people cannot access that care. So yep. Arizona, that means about 4.5 million people cannot access that care. Those are astonishing numbers.
Yeah, it's really insane, the lack of mental health care that we have. And, COVID brought a lot of it to the forefront to people who were in the dark because of the increased suicide rates.
Right.
I mean, in suicidal thoughts in adults, it went from 19% to 40% in 3 years. 19% of adults in 2019 had suicidal thoughts, anxiety, and depression. Now 40% do.
And think about that. For those people who are out there today, half the people that you're going to encounter today, that means by that stat, half of those people have at least thought about it, let alone attempted thought.
Yeah. And it means that 40% of the people that I talk to, so 4 out of every 10 I'm going to talk to today. So over half my appointments today are going to have anxiety and depression.
Correct.
And, if you think about it, that's why I'm really glad I'm in the industry that I'm in, because the big pharma companies they're not built to help. They are built to create profit, and they're built to affect change in the Senate and using their lobbyists to increase their profitability.
Yep.
They all have shareholders, and their shareholders want dividends.
Yep.
So I think it's vitally important for us to, look at what's going on in the world around us, be aware of it, and what our part is it and how it affects us. And then, on the sign of mental health, really just be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who's in your life, and try to pay attention to people that are close to you, and look for things that, are off. Look for someone who acts different. Look for, someone who may not, because personally, I hate asking for help. It is my kryptonite. I hate it. I will try to be as self-sufficient as I possibly can, but it's because I was abused as a child, and I grew up in an environment where asking for help was a sign of weakness.
Right.
And if you were weak, you got beat up. So, and this was by adults who were doing the beatings. So it's not like this was, just some kid shit. So we really need to be aware of that, and we really need to be kinder to each other, because you don't know what someone else went through just because they seem strong. The strong ones are the ones who've been through something. They're the ones who have something to prove because someone once told them that they couldn't do anything right.
Yep. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine attempted suicide, but at the same point, he reached out to someone, and somebody came and spent time with him, talked to him, got through, and we were discussing it the next day. And they said something to me that was extremely I'd never thought of it this way before, basically. But he came out and said that he had lost his job. So that's why he kind of felt that way, amongst other things. Stated that when your sense of worth is less than what it normally is, now you feel worth less.
Yep.
Never put that together. But how poignant is that?
It is. And, it really talks to the ability, because, if you think about it this way, when you lose a part of yourself, whether that is a person, a job, a possession, a status, and when you lose a part of you, what you identify yourself as, which is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, if you think about what you personally identify as, if you lose a part of that, it can be incredibly overwhelming.
Right.
And you can feel like you lose your sense of purpose. And without sense of purpose, you do feel worthless.
Yep. Well, a lot of important things. I hope people not only take something valuable from this, but share this with other people, because you have somebody who, guess what? Maybe they feel like they can't find the help, but maybe we gave them some answers or some ways to get there. We'll put some of this stuff up today. Your closing thoughts, where they can reach out to you, connect with you, and ask more questions, not just on this industry, but where they can maybe get help from some of the things that you've encountered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always available. My cell phone number is 470-904-0497. I encourage people to text me. I have that phone on me. I mean, almost 24/7, except for before I go to bed and during bed.
Right.
I follow that rule. And then if you are interested in any of the products that we have that you can use to try to help yourself and do that self-medication, as over half of us do, you can go to elementsdistro.com, and that will show you a lot of the different things there. You can also research the products, and then you can find out locations that carry those products. And if you need a location to carry that product, then you can reach out to me and I can set that up.
Oh, maybe you got one now already reaching out to you.
Right.
But yeah, we'll have all these different things out there. Remember that there are other alternatives. Yes, we all do self-medicate. In some ways, it might even be just going for a walk, listening to music.
Yeah, however you try to help yourself. We all need to help ourselves.
Correct. And self-medicating does not mean that it's detrimental, i.e. alcohol. We find different realms.
Correct. Just because you're medicating doesn't mean you're over-medicating.
Correct. Absolutely. Because what you said, 93,000 overdoses occurred in the U.S. alone in 2020. What are those numbers today? I guarantee you that's over 100,000.
Yep.
Guaranteed. But guys, you can reach out to us at any time. Myself, DJ NQ75 on Twitter, on Instagram. Share this. We will have this available on our sites, YouTube page. Always go back and revisit them. Thank you so much for coming on, Marky, experiencing and expressing what you've gone through, opening that door to let us see, because so many people don't know how to find help, where to find help, or feel like nobody understands. No, we may not understand exactly what you're going through because they are all different, but everybody's been through something.
Yeah, we all can have sympathy and empathy and understanding, and I think that's vitally important.
We should have that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we thank you for coming on. Look forward to again soon. A lot of great things coming on. People, get out there, enjoy the day, do something for yourself. Treat yourself, even if it's just going out and getting a cup of coffee or spending 30 minutes alone walking somewhere. I try to walk my neighborhood every day. It's a great way to get out, clear your head, and move forward.
Absolutely.
So, guys, we hope you have a blessed week. We'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks for coming, and share this to anyone and everybody you can think of, because everybody's going through something. It's not just you.
Absolutely.
So we look forward to seeing you next week, and have a wonderful week. Bless y'all.